gospel lesson for this morning is the entire story of Passion. I've taken upon myself over the years to interweave that story with the story of one of the people that are mentioned in the gospel lesson. And this day we meet Simon. If you don't know Simon, I will introduce you to Simon. My name is Simon. I'm from Cyrene. It's a city in northern Africa. And I grew up there. We grew up in one of those, well, you've seen these little square mud brick houses before, kind of whitewashed, maybe, if you're lucky. It had a couple rooms. One room was just for living. I mean, that's where everything happened. That's where we ate. That's where everything was going on. There was a smaller area for sleeping. And we slept on mats. The whole family was there. I had brothers and sisters, and my mother and father and grandfather. We all lived in this one house. So I was used to having lots of people around, and I really enjoyed having these people there. Just a little side bit, there is no kitchen. My mother did the baking outside. There was an oven out there where she baked the bread, and all of that wonderful aroma always came through the house. And sometimes she'd make these wonderful crusty breads, and sometimes she'd make rolls that were filled with dates and raisins. I just loved the taste of that. Like I said, there were lots of people in this house, and I loved having these people right next to me all the time. My father and brother and myself, we were what you would call handymen. We did all kinds of work around the neighborhood, anything from carpentry to construction to stonework to all these kind of things. And I really enjoyed that because I got to meet new people and find out new things, and I'm always into seeing what other people's lives are all about. I did have to go through let's see, how can I say this nicely? The instruction from the rabbi. All I remember is what I had to remember. We had to memorize and memorize and memorize the scriptures. I didn't really like that part of it, but I really enjoyed all the holidays of the Jewish tradition. There was the New Year, celebrated with apples and honey, the sweetness and the productivity of the new year coming. Or the Festival of Lights, where we even lit some extra candles or lamps in the house, and it made the house just glow with that wonderful light. The one I really enjoyed, though, was the Passover, because we would save up money during the year to buy a lamb that was roasted. And then there was the wine, and all the people gathered together in the home to celebrate this wonderful occasion. But as I started to get older, I was looking at the scriptures. I knew a lot of them. I started to wonder, well, where was God? You know, Moses didn't let anybody get on that mountain, where God said, you can't come up on the mountain. God was there on top of the mountain. Nobody could see God. If you saw God, you would die, which I thought was kind of scary. And there was Elijah being put into a crack in the mountain so that Elijah wouldn't see God. It was like God was out there, up there, somewhere where I really wasn't. I longed for God to be here, right here, where I was, where I lived my life every day. I longed for God to come be there right beside me. Well, it came to pass, but I have to start a little further back. Our family went to Jerusalem for the Passover. It was quite a trek, but we had some friends there, some family there, so we would celebrate the Passover there in the holy city. This was new to me, so I was out wandering one day, looking down some of these little tight streets where just a donkey could go. And I heard all kinds of commotion going on over toward the main road. So I went over there, and there was a huge crowd gathered, and they were waving branches and saying, "Hosanna in the highest." And I got a hold of somebody, I said, "Well, what's this all about?" And they said, "Well, this is the one that claims to be the Messiah." And I thought, yeah, right. I've seen this before. But I slipped between the crowd and got a little bit closer just to see what was going on. And here this they called him Jesus, was coming on a donkey. And I thought, that's interesting. I was wondering really who he was. And somehow our eyes caught each other. And he was looking at me, I was looking at him, and it's like he knew me and there was something between us. I couldn't quite figure it out. So I did go. He taught in the temple during the week. So I went to listen. I thought, well, he's some pretty good stuff there. But I could feel the tension building around the temple and Jesus and all of this. The guards were there. The military was there. It was like Jesus was the center of attraction. Like he was drawing too many people there for the authorities. So it did come to pass. After we had celebrated our Passover meal, it was late at night. I was walking back to where our family stayed. Again, I heard a commotion. So I had to go see what was going on. And there was this Jesus in chains and being dragged along by the guards, and all around were the temple authorities. And I thought, well, what are they doing in the middle of the night with this Jesus? So I followed along. They drug him to the high priest's house. And I could hear bits and pieces of what the high priest was saying. They were questioning him, trying to intimidate him, trying to indict him on something. And finally the high priest said, well, you claim to be the Messiah. Are you the Messiah? And Jesus said, I am. Well, the high priest turned pale, and then he turned red with anger, and he tore his clothes and hollered, blasphemy, death to you. It's interesting because the high priest doesn't have the authority to pronounce death. They had to take Jesus to Pontius Pilate, the governor, the crafty one, the fox, if you want to know who he was. So they take Jesus to Pontius Pilate. in the conversation, I could get close enough to hear some of what was going on. And finally, Pilate asked him, "Are you what they claim? They claim that you're the Messiah, the Son of God. Are you?" I could hear Jesus said, "So you say I am." And Pontius Pilate said, well, it's fine with me. I really don't care. You might make a good king, maybe even better than the one they have now. So he told the crowd, "I'm just going to whip him a little bit and let him go." Well, the whole crowd just exploded. "No, crucify him." Pilate looked so puzzled, like, what? What did he do? And he says, "I know what I'll do. You have Jesus, you have Barabbas. It's my custom to let one of them go. Do you want Jesus let go or the one criminal Barabbas?" And they said, "Barabbas." I was stunned. Why would you want a criminal let go when Jesus was there? But they shouted that much louder, "Crucify him, crucify him." Finally, Pilate, I could see him getting nervous. He finally just said, "Okay, I wash my hands of this whole thing, take him away." Well, the guards took him, put a crown of thorns on his head, blood all over the place. And they gave him a cross to carry. And it was like a gauntlet from where he was to carry that cross to Golgotha, where he would be crucified. Anybody could do anything they wanted. They threw rocks, they spat on him, they called him names. And I could see that he must have been a terrifically strong person, because he carried that cross for a long time before he finally fell. And then he fell again. And finally, the last time I saw him fall, one of the Roman soldiers pointed at me and said, "You, come here." And I thought, me? What does he want with me? And he was starting to take his sword out when I got the idea of what he wanted. He said, "You, get underneath there with him." So we picked up the cross, and our shoulders touched. And I could see the blood, I could smell the blood, and our eyes met. And in that moment, I knew who he was. I knew truly he was the Messiah. Don't ask me how I knew, but I knew he was. I had longed for a God that would be there beside me, not somewhere way off somewhere. And here was God right next to me. God had come to me. God had found me in this very unlikely place. I had seen the face of God. And it would be Jesus that would die. As we got closer to Golgotha, I could feel his strength leaving him. I finally carried the cross myself, and he leaned against me. They crucified him there. Now it remains to see what happens. Does God come to earth? What will happen to him?